So today's topic is the structures of brain and a spinal cord. Okay, so these two important organs comes under the central nervous system. In human being and in the animals, there are three systems related to the nervous systems: peripheral nervous system, autonomic nervous system, and central nervous system. So these two important structures, brain and spinal cords, is comes under the central nervous system. So now we all know human being is the intelligent species in this earth, in this world, mainly due to the size of brain that is heaviest and larger in comparison to the other animals. You see, brain is located in a cavity that is known as cranial cavity. So there are four major cavities present in our body. First is cranial cavity, thoracic cavity, abdominal cavity, and pelvic cavity. Out of this, the brain is located in a cavity that is known as cranial cavity. So what is brain? Brain is the part of central nervous systems, and this central nervous system already discussed brain and
हमको भी देखने दीजिए ना, हमारे
brain.
क्लास चल रहा है.
Okay, so this important structures located in a cavity that is known as cranial cavity. Average weight of the brain in case of the ox and in case of the cattle that contains buffaloes, bovine, that is about half kg, 500 grams, and in case of the horse is about 750 grams, and in the small animal, dog and cat, it depends upon the breed also, but in an average it is 60 grams, and human being 1.5 grams in adult. So when the brain we see externally from the outside, when they put brain on the table or any space, then externally visible part is cerebral hemisphere, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. And another structures, then we go the different levels on the lateral side, medial side, ventral side, then a structure will be visible. Now you see the three major part of the brains. In general, we call forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. So development of brain start from the three fascicles, that is anterior, middle, and posterior fascicles. And these three fascicles is responsible for formation of whole part of the brain. And this forebrain is also called progencephalon, and this midbrain is also called as mesencephalon, and hindbrain is also called as rovencephalon. Okay, so I think this is clear. So now, principal part of the brain during after fertilizations, when fetus formation of the fetus start, nervous system begins to start from this tube, which is known as neural tube, and after that there is a dilatation of the neural tube from the upper part to the caudal part, bottom part, and uppermost part or anterior part in the animal is called progencephalon, that is forebrain. Middle dilated part of the neural tube is called mesencephalon, and caudal part or posterior part is known as rovencephalon, means forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. And after that, again, division start and formation of the brains, and their other parts begins to start through the different structures. So first forebrain is converted into two major parts, that is telencephalon and diencephalon. Okay, and mid part is not going further other development or divisions, so it can remain contains known as mesencephalon, and caudalmost part is metencephalon and mesencephalon. So this slide is show the derivatives of the neural tubes in the form of formation of the brain, that is forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Again, forebrain divided into two parts, telencephalon, diencephalon, and mesencephalon itself is single structures and divided into three sub-component we will discuss later on. And this hindbrain, that is rovencephalon, again divided into metencephalon and melencephalon. So up to this, when we see the brain externally, these structures are visible. The largest part, yellow colors, is called श्रेया. इसको क्या बोलेंगे? ये जो yellow colors, light yellow colors, is the part.
Cerebral hemisphere.
Exactly right. Cerebral hemisphere means cerebral hemisphere is the part of forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Which one?
This forebrain.
Forebrain, exactly right. So we are going to again study about the other component of this forebrain. We have already seen in this forebrain divided into telencephalon and diencephalon. You see here, this is the part of forebrain divided, contains two major parts, telencephalon and diencephalon. Midbrain, this structure is known as midbrain, and this caudal part is known as hindbrain, that is rovencephalon, and rovencephalon is again divided into metencephalon and malencephalon. You see in this picture, this is the division of a neural tube. This is the neural tube. Neural tube divided into three major components: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. And again, this forebrain divided into two parts, which is telencephalon and diencephalon. Mesencephalon itself a midbrain. Metencephalon gives the derivatives of pons and cerebellum, and malencephalon gives the derivatives of medulla oblongata. And this elongated part is considered as the spinal, or longest part is considered as the spinal cord. So this is clear. This is the theoretical representation of this principal part of the brain. We have already discussed the brain, forebrain, mesencephalon, progencephalon, midbrain, mesencephalon, and hindbrain is called diencephalon or rovencephalon. So these are the structures comes under the forebrain and progencephalon. We will discuss one by one with the help of photograph and with the help of the descriptive term. So first telencephalon, you see this picture, this telencephalon contains following parts, forms the following part, that is the first cerebral hemisphere. Is the largest part of the brain. Cerebral hemisphere is the largest part of brain. Olfactory bulb, olfactory tract, optic nerve, pituitary body, retina, lateral ventricles, and anterior part of the third ventricle. These all are formed by these structures, telencephalon. So telencephalon contains the following parts: cerebral hemisphere, optic bulb, olfactory tract, optic nerve, pituitary body, retina, lateral ventricles. These are the structures comes under the telencephalon, and diencephalon mostly form the pineal body, optic thalmi, hypothalamus, and third ventricles. Okay, so one by one we will discuss, and this is the component of the hindbrain or rovencephalon. It contains four subdivisions: metencephalon, we have already seen in this picture, cerebellum and the pons, that is formed by the metencephalon, and next is malencephalon, only form the medulla oblongata, and isthmus rhombens 5, we form the anterior cerebral peduncle and anterior medullary velum, and last is the fourth ventricle. These all components comes under the hindbrain or rovencephalon. So one by one, in this you see the derivatives of the neural tube. This dilatation forms the forebrain, that is the telencephalon, diencephalon, this midbrain, and this hindbrain. You see again secondary vesicles forms, and they form forebrain, telencephalon, olfactory bulb, hippocampus, cerebrum, and other optic vesicles, epithalamus, thalamus, hypothalamus, and midbrains generally form three parts. We will discuss later on, and this is metencephalon forms cerebellum pons, and malencephalon forms medulla oblongata and other structures. So now you see here, this is the structure of the brain, and this outermost part, largest part, is known as cerebrum, and because it is paired structures and not a complete circle, so it is known as cerebral hemisphere. Diencephalon contains, we have the structure thalamus and hypothalamus, and this is the cerebellum, this part cerebellum, and the brain stem is considered as medulla, pons, and spinal cord is the other part of the central nervous system. You can see this picture is also showing cerebral cortex, and this is the cerebellum. So this is known as cerebrum, and cerebrum contains internally in towards the ventral aspect following the structure: hypothalamus, pituitary, pons, medulla oblongata, and a spinal cord. So these are the structure. You see here, first component, telencephalon, is known as cerebral hemisphere, is the largest part of the forebrain. So, and cerebral hemisphere is the part of telencephalon. So what is cerebrum? Cerebrum is the largest portion of the brain and consists of two parts. These two parts, right and left. These two external part, right and left, ventrally, नीचे की तरफ, ventrally connected to each other by structures that is known as corpus callosum. So this is the corpus callosum. What is corpus callosum? Corpus callosum is the structure located below the cerebral hemisphere, which connects the right and left part of the cerebral hemisphere. So what is cerebrum? You know, cerebrum is the largest part of the forebrain, and ventrally having a septum-like, band-like structures which connect the two hemispheres that is known as corpus callosum. So these are the structures of the forebrain. First, cerebral hemisphere. Cerebral hemisphere are the oval shaped structures separated to each other by a longitudinal fissure and contains four lobes. This cerebral hemisphere externally, when we see, it contains four lobes. Those facing toward the anterior aspect, frontal lobe, and on its peripheral, parietal lobe, and below that, occipital lobe, and this is the temporal lobe. So externally, this cerebral hemisphere forms four lobes: frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital, and the temporal lobe. Now, the structure you see, this cerebral hemisphere or cerebral hemisphere externally known as cerebral cortex and having the following structure. Like this is known as fissure or sulcus. These deep structure externally, when we see the picture, you see this picture of the brain, there are some fissures, means गड्ढा. एक गड्ढा like जो structure होता है उसको हम लोग sulcus बोलते हैं, और ये जो sulcus convoluted structure जो बनता है उसको हम लोग gyrus बोलते हैं. There are two words related to the cortical part of the cerebral hemisphere. One is the sulcus, another is the gyrus. Gyrus is nothing but it is a convoluted structure present over the cerebrum is known as gyrus, and those structure which comes inside in the form of fissure that is known as sulcus. This is deep structure known as sulcus. So I think this is clear. What is cerebral hemisphere? It is the largest part of the brain, oval in shape and separated by a longitudinal fissures and contains four lobes. These lobes are frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and the temporal lobe. What is falx cerebri? What is falx cerebri? Falx cerebri is the deep fissure. Deep fissure on the surface of the hemisphere is marked by a number of winding reeds that is known as cerebral gyri. We have already discussed what is gyri, what is gyrus single, and gyri, and what is sulcus. So these deep structures comes. So Shreya, you can explain what these structures where the circus is running, where the cursor is running. There are
This
two.
is sulci.
This is
So
sulcus.
sulci and gyri.
Now I am asking this structure. There are two structures. One is the structure looking gray, another is looking white.
So gray matter and white matter.
Exactly right. So these structures located on the cortical region that is known as gray matter and that is known as white matter. And these in between this gray and white matter, there is a deep fissure-like structure. This is known as sulcus. And the convoluted structure, superficially external part is known as gyrus. So I think this is clear, sulcus and gyrus. So this surface of the hemisphere is marked by a number of winding reeds, known as cerebral gyri, are convoluted, separated by a sulci, single and plural. The unturned projections are seen in the anterior extremity in the form of frontal lobe is known as olfactory bulb. So what is olfactory bulb? In this picture you can see this is whole structure known as cerebrum. The anterior part and is the oval and pointed structure which may be visible from the dorsal aspect, but from the ventral aspect it is clearly visible, and this bulb-like structure is known as olfactory bulb. You can discuss later on what is these structure, highlighted structure. These all comes under the talent supply. So what is these structures? First is you see here in this falx cerebri, sulcus, gyrus, and its anterior extremity of the cerebral hemisphere having a bulb-like structure located on the frontal pole, a frontal lobe that is known as olfactory bulb. Now, occipital pole covers the midbrain and overlies the each side. Anterior part is known as cerebellum, from which it is separated by a transverse fissure which contains the tentorium cerebelli. We can discuss later on the structure what is tentorium cerebelli. So these are the lobe there are four major lobes present on the cerebral hemisphere: frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal. And frontal lobe anteriorly having a valve for its dorsally may be visible or may not be visible, or ventrally it is clear cut visible. These bulb or lobe like structure is known as olfactory bulb. So I think this is clear, this picture, and these bird are also clear. What is fisher, what is garai, what is sulcus, what is olfactory bulb, occipital lobe, and we will discuss later on tentorium cerebelli. So what is cerebral cortex? Any structure in the form of glands or gonads. Outer part is known as cortex and innermost part is known as medulla. So this is cerebral cortex is the outermost structure. These all structure are known as cerebral hemisphere from here to here, and outermost part is known as cerebral cortex. So cerebral cortex is the layer of cerebral hemisphere composed of nerve cell, nerve fiber, and neuroglial cells. These all structures comes under the cortical part of the cerebrum, that is known as cerebral cortex, and this cerebral cortex contains the structures like nerve fiber, nerve cells, and the neuroglial cells. They all are located on the cortical region of the cerebral hemisphere, and this structure is known as cerebral cortex. Now we have seen the picture of gray matter and white matter. This is outer part is the gray matter, and this innermost part is known as white matter. So Gulshan Kumar is listening to me. Gulshan Kumar, you just unmute your device. Gulshan, are you listening to me? Gulshan Kumar, Gulshan, unmute करो अपने आप को. Gulshan, are you listening to me? Next, Bhavesh Kumar. Bhavesh, unmute करेगा. Bhavesh, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Can you difference these structures? You see here in this structure, outermost part is known as gray matter and innermost part is known as white matter. Is there any difference in the structure of a spinal cord and brain related to this layer? Anyone?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Sir, opposite.
Ash क्यों बोलेगा?
Sir,
Sir, brain
sir,
में
the
जो
location of cortex and medulla is just opposite.
Exactly right. In this case of the spinal cord, in this is a spinal cord, these structure are just opposite. So this
Yes, sir.
is clear. What is gray matter? Outermost layer of the cerebral cortex is called gray matter, and it contains histologically, when we see this critically examine this layer, it contains 6 histological layer and composed of the axon tract, glial cells, and blood vessels. What is white matter? White matter located below the gray matter and histologically contains 3 groups of fibers and composed of the oligodendrocyte and astrocyte are the structure of the nervous system, which mainly contains comes under the white matter. So I think this is what is cerebral cortex, what is gray matter, and what is white matter. You see in this picture, this is the structure of brain and this is the structure of the spinal cord. So this gray matter located on is the cortical regions, and this white portion, white matter located on is the central part of the brain. Just reverse that Velal has explained, and Shreya also. This white matter located on the cortical regions and this gray matter located on the central part of the spinal cord. So this is the difference between the spinal cord and brain related to the structures of the gray matter and white matter. Okay. So now next is what is olfactory bulb. We have already seen this picture. In this picture, you see this is the olfactory bulb. And what is olfactory bulb? This is olfactory bulb and band-like structures just deviated from on downward in direction. This is known as olfactory tract. And these olfactory tracts divided into 2 parts, one towards the lateral, another towards the medial. This is known as olfactory striae. This is known as olfactory striae. One is the outer olfactory striae, another is the inner olfactory striae. So in this structure, we have explained 3 main components: olfactory bulb, olfactory tract. Olfactory tract divided into 2 parts, outer and inner. Outer is known as outer olfactory striae and inner is known as inner olfactory striae. So three structures are clear. In between two striae, this triangular spectra, you see here, this triangular structures is known as olfactory trigon. So in this slide, we will discuss about these terms, these structures, those we have already seen in this slide. So what is olfactory bulb? What is olfactory tract? This tract divided into two parts. On outer, another is inner. Olfactory called it olfactory striae. Another is trigon. Another is known as trigon. Okay. So if you are feeling any interrupted in this network connection, you may join in with same ID. Okay. So next, what is olfactory bulb? We have already seen the picture. These are an oval elongated structures on each hemisphere situated on the anteroventral aspect of the frontal lobe and lodged in a fossa. This fossa is known as olfactory fossa. So what is olfactory fossa? Olfactory fossa is a space for the accommodation of a bulb, that is olfactory bulb, and which located on the occipital lobe, which is true and false. Amresh Kumar, olfactory fossa is located on temporal lobe of the cerebral hemisphere. Amresh, it is true and false. Olfactory fossa located on the temporal lobe of the cerebral hemisphere. True and false.
No, sir.
क्या है ये?
Frontal
होगा, राइट? फ्रंटल होगा ना? आगे के पार्ट में
Yes, sir.
लोग भी बोलते हैं, पोल ही बोलते हैं. So what is olfactory fossa? Unmute होएगा. Olfactory fossa is a structures of cavity-like structures which located on the frontal lobe, anteroventral part, that is accommodation of the olfactory bulb. Okay, and each bulb receives the olfactory nerve and serve as the organ of sense, smell. इसका काम होता है olfaction का काम. This is the first cranial nerve, first cranial nerve, olfactory, is connected with the olfactory bulb and play major role for the sense of smell. So this is clear. Olfactory bulb is clear and olfactory fossa is clear. Now olfactory tract. Olfactory tract are the thick paired short bundle of fiber which extend backward and divided into two parts. मैंने यहाँ पे बताया ये जो olfactory bulb है, यहाँ पर दो एक बैंड लाइक स्ट्रक्चर होता है जिसको हम लोग olfactory tract बोलते हैं, और यह olfactory tract दो भाग में आपस में बढ़ता है, बाहर की तरफ अंदर की तरफ. जो बाहर की तरफ होता है उसको outer olfactory striae बोलते हैं और अंदर की तरफ जो होता है उसको inner olfactory striae कहते हैं, और इन दोनों के बीच में एक triangular space बनता है जिसको हम लोग olfactory trigon बोलते हैं. इसी का हम लोग यहाँ पे डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. So what is olfactory tract? Olfactory tract is the thick paired short bundle of fibers which extend backward and divided into two inner and outer olfactory striae. A triangular area placed between these striae is called olfactory trigon. So I think this is clear. This term is clear. Olfactory bulb, olfactory fossa, olfactory tract, olfactory striae, and olfactory trigon. Naveen Kumar Mehta, it is clear?
Yes, sir.
What is olfactory trigon? Naveen बताएगा. What is olfactory trigon? Naveen.
Yes, sir.
What is olfactory trigon? वहां मिलेगा नहीं, मोबाइल में तुम खोज रहे हो. बताओ.
No, sir. A triangle. A triangular structure located between the olfactory fossa.
No. Olfactory striae. Outer and inner olfactory striae. The triangular space, you see here, this is the triangular space located between the outer and inner olfactory striae, that is known as olfactory trigon. So I think this is clear. These birds are clear. Now, optic nerve. Optic nerve is the unique part which contains relation with the both brain and with the eye wall, and also considered as the second cranial nerve. Optic nerve is considered out of 12 pair of the cranial nerve. This is considered as the second cranial nerve, or simply known as CN second, and this contains the relation with optic eye with the brain. Means is a pair cranial nerve that transmit the visual information to the brain through retina. So this optic nerve is nothing but it is a second cranial nerve and paired in number, which transmit the visual information from retina to the brain. So these are the structures comes under telencephalon, olfactory bulb, olfactory fossa, olfactory tract, olfactory trigon, olfactory striatum, optic nerve. Now, what is pituitary gland, retina, lateral ventricle, and third ventricle? Before that, you have to must see this picture. This is the pineal. This is the pineal body. This is visible, Shreya? Shreya.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Good. So this is pineal body, and this structure is known as yellow color choroid plexus, and below that this structure is known as round structure is known as thalamus, and this is the third ventricle, and this one is the lateral ventricle, and this third ventricle distally contains this part is known as pituitary gland, and this is known as thalamus round structure. Below the thalamus is known as hypothalamus, and this is connected with the hypothalamus by a stuccal. This is a stuccal. So these are the structures. Only we are going to see the structure present in the telencephalons, and these are the structures which comes under the telencephalon. That is pituitary gland. We all know, also known as the master gland, and it lies the middle part of the base of the skulls, housed in a bony structure that is known as sella turcica. What is sella turcica? Sella turcica is a cavity-like structure located on the brain, which provide the accommodation for the master's glands that is known as pituitary gland. And this pituitary gland attached with the hypothalamus by a stuccal. We have already seen in the picture. This is the hypothalamus. This structure is known as hypothalamus, and this is the thalamus, hypothalamus, and this is the pituitary gland. And this pituitary gland is connected with the hypothalamus by the stuccles. So I think this is clear. What is pituitary gland? Now, retina. Retina is a thin layer of tissue that lines the back portion of the eye, and that inside located the optic nerve. रेटिना जो है ऑप्टिक नर्व जो डाइवर्ट करता है ब्रेन से आकर के, जो कि आंख को जाता है. There are three layers of the eyeball. One is the outermost is the fibrous, vascular, and the nervous layer. So retina is the layer of eyeball that is considered the nervous layer, which connect with the brain with the help of optic nerve. Now, lateral ventricle. Lateral ventricle is the C-shaped cavity, largest cavity. There are three ventricles are present in the brain for the circulation of the cerebrospinal fluid. Largest is known as lateral ventricle. This you see, this structure is known as lateral ventricle. This is lateral ventricle, and this is known as third ventricle. This is structure, and these arrows show the flow of CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. This is third ventricle, and this one is the fourth ventricle. There are three ventricles present in the brain which play a major role for the formation of and circulation of CSF. So this structure is known as choroid plexus. ये choroid plexus से CSF का बनना शुरू होता है. पहले थर्ड वेंट्रिकल्स में आता है, लेटरल वेंट्रिकल्स में, फिर थर्ड वेंट्रिकल में, फिर फोर्थ वेंट्रिकल्स में. उसके बाद कुछ जो होता है CSF डायरेक्ट स्पाइनल कॉर्ड में आ जाता है, और कुछ यहाँ से पीछे की तरफ चलता है, जो ब्रेन के कॉर्टिकल रीजन में इसको सप्लाई देता है, न्यूट्रिशन देता है, और कुछ इस साइड में. तो जब भी एक फ्लूइड एक कंपार्टमेंट से दूसरे कंपार्टमेंट में आएगा, तो कुछ ना कुछ वहां पर फोरामेन होगा. तो पहला जो आता है उसको फोरामेन मैग्नम बोलते हैं, दूसरा जो आता है एक्विडक्ट ऑफ सिल्वियस, और यहाँ पर दो फोरामेन होता है जो कि सीधे चला आता है, उसको फोरामेन मेजेंडाई बोलते हैं, जो स्पाइनल कॉर्ड में आ जाता है, जो इस डायरेक्शन को जाता है और इस डायरेक्शन को जाता है उसको फोरामेन लस्टिका बोलते हैं. जो मिडिल में होता है मेजेंडाई, इस साइड को जाता है लस्टिका, और इस साइड को जाता है उसको लस्टिका बोलते हैं, लेटरल साइड. सो दीज आर द स्ट्रक्चर्स. Lateral ventricle is the C-shaped cavity, largest ventricle of the brain, and contains the CSFs located in the cerebral hemisphere, known as left and right ventricles. Lateral ventricles, respectively separated by a septum that is known as septum pellucidum, and this cavity is connected with the third ventricle by a bicep opening that is known as foramen menro. This is the foramen menro. This is the foramen menro. Because cerebral hemisphere is the two part, is the half part of the brain, and another part of the brain is another side. When two are comes in contact with, they connected to each other, and two foramen from the right and the left. This foramen menro is for the passage of CSF from lateral ventricles to third ventricle. So I think third lateral ventricle is clear. Now third ventricle. Third ventricle is the narrow funnel shaped structure, lies in the center of the brain. It lies below the corpus callosum and the body of the lateral ventricles between the two thalami. This is the thalami. This structure is known as thalami. This total structure is known as thalamus. Between the two thalami and ball of the hypothalamus and above the pituitary and midbrain. Anterosuperiorly with the contact with the foramen magnum and posteriorly with the fourth ventricle by the aqueduct of Sylvius. So in this slide, previous slide, two important things. This is the third ventricle. This ventricles is third ventricle. Third ventricles anteriorly and dorsally comes in contact with the lateral ventricle by the foramen magnum. This is structure in foramen magnum and distally and posteriorly. Human being के केस में distally नीचे की तरफ